Hey, all you gamblers, sports addicts, and overall degenerates.
You're listening to
the Angry Degenerate Podcast, your one-stop shop for sports hot takes and primo gambling picks. And now, the voice behind the laugh heard round the world, the Angry Degenerate.
And welcome to the Angry Degenerate Podcast. I am your motherfucking Angry Degenerate, Michael Alexandre. Thank you all for tuning in to episode now 18 of the Angry Degenerate Podcast. It's been a great ride so far, to say the least. I will be doing an abbreviated episode today. I'm not going to go game by game. I'm just going to give you a couple of takes on some of the games that I saw. And then I actually will be taking off for the week. I'll be going to the great country of Mexico and spending time near the beach. So I will not be podcasting next week, but I will be releasing a podcast this week, an abbreviated version, just like I mentioned. I also wanted to mention that I will be a guest on the Now on the Clock podcast. I'm recording this episode on a Tuesday. It will be released on a Wednesday. So by the time you hear this, that episode will also be out wherever you find your podcast, whether it be Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, what have you. It's called the On the Clock podcast. I'll be talking to a group of guys and just discussing the NFL this past week, touch on the San Francisco Giants and their postseason chances, and touch on the 49ers and what's going on that team. Before I do get to the football portion of the podcast, I'm also going to have my dumbass of the week, and I'm going to give you some picks of the week. I want to briefly touch on baseball. Today, which is Tuesday, by the time you hear this podcast on a Wednesday, you'll know what the results are of the wild card matchups. Today, the Boston Red Sox play the New York Yankees. It'll be at Yankee Stadium at home. It'll be Garrett Cole versus Nathan Eovaldi. When you get those two baseball juggernauts in that rivalry in a one-game playoff, that is going to be fucking intense. Baseball playoffs is here. Baseball playoffs is one of the best times of year. And I'm happy to sit down in front of my television and watch Red Sox Yankees for probably a 4-hour game, because it seems like those two teams always make these games last 3, 4, 5 hours. Tomorrow, which would be Wednesday, you'll get the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are going to be without Max Muncy. I think that's going to be a big loss for them, against the red-hot St. Louis Cardinals in the other wild card matchup. Winner goes on to face the San Francisco Giants, the 107-win San Francisco Giants, the team that has pretty much surprised everyone in the goddamn world. You'll go through every single publication to start out the year. Nobody had the Giants in the postseason. At best, they had them in third place, sitting behind the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Diego Padres. The Giants came out and surprised everyone, including their own fans, including myself. I had absolutely no idea that this was going to happen. Now, the wild card will be coming up. The Giants are going to face a tough opponent regardless of who it is. But let's be honest here. The Dodgers are a formidable opponent. You just look at that rotation that they have. Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, Urias. It's just 1, 2, 3. Those three guys right there is a tough matchup for anybody. But if anybody has played the Dodgers tougher than the Giants, I would like you to point them out, because the Giants beat the season series this year. I think it was 10-9, barely in favor of the Giants. Last year, in that abbreviated season. The Giants also played them tough. I believe the Giants were the only team that were 500 against the Dodgers last year, surprisingly enough. And then just dating back to these 8 straight years that the Dodgers have won, that have been perennial back-to-back division champions, the Giants are always the team that plays them the toughest. Now, it is a rivalry game, so, both teams get up for it. But the Giants and the Dodgers have never in their history ever played each other in postseason history. Can you fucking believe that? That is a statistic of a lifetime. But it might happen this year. But I think the Dodgers shouldn't count their, they should really watch out for the Cardinals, because at one point in time, the Cardinals won 17 straight games. I think once they clinched the wild card, they ended up losing, their last 2 to 3 games. But at that point, once you clinch, that's all you really need to worry about. Rest up. And I know there was a couple matchups this year where the Cardinals did take it to the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers ended up winning the season series, but they were pretty tough games for the Dodgers. But in a one-game playoff, and the Dodgers have all those pitchers to rely on. In fact, I forgot earlier to even mention Max Scherzer. So 1 through 4, Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, Julio Urias. That is tough. I think the Dodgers are absolutely still the favorites to win the World Series, but they just got to get past the Cardinals first. So we shall see. But kudos to the San Francisco Giants, 107 wins, most in postseason history. I think I saw a statistic. Did I just say most in postseason history? No, I meant most in San Francisco Giants history. I also saw a statistic where they were the third behind. I believe the Houston Astros won 109 games a few years ago. I believe the Red Sox won 107 games a couple years ago as well. They're the team that has won the most games in the last 20 plus years. Obviously, there was that Seattle Mariners team in 2001 that won 116 games. They got bounced out quickly. The Houston Astros, they won 109 games a few years back. They lost in the World Series. The Boston Red Sox team that won 107 games a few years ago, they did win the World Series. So the Giants are in pretty decent company here with some legendary teams. But at the end of the day, if you ask me as a baseball fan, I would much rather play the St. Louis Cardinals. I think the Giants would fare much better against them, just considering their rotation, and the Giants are still without Brandon Belt. But the Dodgers are also without Max Muncy. But, it's not like they don't have a bunch of other cats to cover them up there. Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, Justin Turner. It's a murderer's row there in LA. But suffice to say, I'm looking forward to the Major League Baseball playoffs. Moving on now to what everybody wants to hear about, which is my takes on some of the games this weekend. I'm going to start off with the 49ers. The 49ers had a very disappointing loss this past weekend to the Seattle Seahawks, 28-21. And it was disappointing on various fronts. The 49ers absolutely dominated the first half. It was a statistic like they outgained them 200 plus yards to 55. In fact, Seattle didn't get their first down until almost halftime. And despite all that, despite dominating, they went into halftime at 7-7. And when I saw that, my immediate thought was, this is not going to end good. Because once you dominate like that for a half and you don't even have a lead, the Seattle Seahawks are not just going to sit there on those 7 points. Russell Wilson is going to start making plays, and boy, did he do that in the second half. Their offense came alive. Their running game came alive. The 49ers defense, to their credit, kept them in the game. The score actually was a little bit closer than the actual score. The score was 28-21. the 49ers actually scored a garbage time touchdown. Trey Lance came into the game at halftime. Jimmy G once again got injured. That's why they went out and traded up to number 3, because they just simply cannot rely on Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo, dating back to 2019 when he had 27 touchdown passes and 13 interceptions. He has not gotten better, folks. In fact, he might be the same. He might even he actually kind of, in my opinion, looks worse, but he definitely has not improved. And to me, if you don't improve as an NFL quarterback, you're getting worse, because everyone else is getting better. Just look at the fucking division that they play in. Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray. Stafford and Murray are playing at MVP type levels. The 49ers by far have the worst quarterback situation in the NFC West. We saw that come to fruition in the game against Seattle, where Jimmy left with a calf injury. Trey came in. It was pretty evident that Trey took a little bit of time to get into the game. In fact, that third quarter that he got placed in there, the 49ers just did not look good offensively. They didn't look efficient. A couple turnovers cost them the game. A couple bad penalties. And all that crap that happens, bad penalties, not having your team ready, turnovers are not necessarily on the head coach, but all those other things, just the play calling to me was a little bit iffy. I got questions for Kyle Shanahan, because Kyle Shanahan for far too long has gotten a pass. He came into a bad situation in San Francisco with a team that didn't have much talent, didn't have a quarterback. It took him 2 years to finally get a quarterback, which was Jimmy Garoppolo. They traded it for him. He came in. They won 5 games immediately. They ended his first season on a high note. Jimmy comes into the next year, game 2, tears his ACL, out for the year. That year's pretty much done. Then year 3, Kyle's there, and they go to a Super Bowl. That Super Bowl year gave Kyle some equity within the 49ers fan base. I see that equity slowly going away, especially if the 49ers don't make the postseason this year. And considering the division that they are in, considering the quarterbacks that are in that division, considering the injuries that the 49ers have at the moment, as we stand today, I had the 49ers winning the wild card. I'm second-guessing myself, because there's a couple things that have been glaring to me. One, Kyle's baby, which is supposed to be the offense, has not been performing well. Outside of Deebo Samuel, everything else has been subpar. The running game has been subpar. The play calling has been subpar. Brandon Ayuk, their first-round pick from last year, is either in Kyle's doghouse or something's going on there, because he's not performing up to par. Something's not vibing well there in San Francisco. And Kyle now, I've always been a supporter of Kyle, and I still am a supporter of Kyle. I think he's one of the most innovative play callers in the game. But something's off this year. To me, something was off when Trey Lance came into the game. He didn't seem like he was prepared. And Kyle even said so himself, that the game plan was not written for him. But those are kind of things you have to practice during the week. And if I'm reading between the lines, it doesn't seem like Trey Lance is getting much practice during the week, which is why he looked a little bit rusty. Now, as the game went on, Trey looked a lot better. Trey does things that Jimmy, in his wildest dreams, could never do. He can extend plays. We saw that a little bit. He has a rocket of an arm. Just needs a little bit of touch on those passes. I get a little bit of Colin Kaepernick out of Trey Lance. He just throws bullets at dudes, which means one of two things. One, he'll miss some passes because he's throwing them way too damn hard. But two, he's going to be hard to be intercepted. Now, I like the aspect that he can make moves with his legs. That brings another dynamic to the offense. Jimmy left the game with an injury. It seems like he's day-to-day. There's a chance he might play this upcoming week. We shall see. There was a fear that Trent Williams would be missing sometimes. He is also day-to-day. I could see him missing a week. Jalen Moore, which was the left tackle that came in to play for Williams, Trent Williams, actually performed pretty well. But something ain't vibing with that 49ers defense. And then the thing that gets me, with the 49ers offense, but then the thing that gets me is that they're just not a very disciplined team at the moment. They lead the league in pass interference penalties. That to me shows me that they are not disciplined. And these pass interference penalties, they're 15 plus yards, automatic first down, or spot of the foul. These aren't baby penalties. We had a couple this past week with Trey Kirkpatrick. I mean, let's be honest here. The 49ers are... My biggest fear was that they lost Jason Verrett. Their defensive backfield was going to be in shambles. They've actually performed decently well outside of, a few passes to DK Metcalf, outside of, obviously Devontae Adams is a extraordinary athlete. He's going to put it on anybody, especially a sixth-round rookie like he did on Lenore. But I think for the most part, the defense has been keeping them in games. The offense, they're having a hard time scoring points this season. And considering that this is Kyle Shanahan's baby, that's an issue. This is what he's known for. So if he's having problems with running an effective offense, then we got to go back to the drawing board, because it's a problem to me when you draft a guy at 25th overall last year like they did with Brandon Ayuk, and he's not even playing that much. In fact, the 49ers draft history, the gimme picks that you're supposed to get, the first round picks have been, or second round picks, have been an utter failure outside of Nick Bosa. I mean, we really don't know what we have with Trey Lance yet, so that's TBD. But some of these picks, they've got a second round guy this past year in Banks, a guard out of Notre Dame. One of the comments from people was that he's slow-footed, and I thought, zone blocking scheme and slow-footed does not go hand in hand. He hasn't even dressed for any of these games. He's a second-round pick. The 49ers passed on Asante Samuel Jr., who's having a great year with the LA Chargers, and who could have helped the 49ers massively on defense. Now, I'm going to give them credit where credit is due. Some of their later round picks, the Fred Warners of the world, the George Kittles of the world, they have been absolute hits. The Dre Greenlaws, the Al Zashir moves, they have been absolute hits. But some of these can't miss picks that you have in the first, second, third rounds. I mean, we're talking about Solomon Thomas, who, by the way, now with the Raiders is fucking performing well. He bulked up, and he seems like a totally different guy. He just wasn't that guy in San Francisco, but we spent a third pick overall on him. You're talking about Dante Pettis, second round pick, wide receiver. We're talking about now, there's questions about Brandon Ayuk, a first round pick. These can't miss draft picks are not quite hitting. And Kyle runs the show here, guys. It's not John Lynch. It's Kyle fucking Shanahan. So everything that's going bad with the 49ers is on Kyle's fucking shoulders. And guess what? Kyle reminds me of a little bit of a privileged white man in America. Because his dad was an NFL head coach, one of the best for many years. And Kyle, I believe, has gotten a lot of passes in this league because he's the son of a former head coach in the league. I think I saw a statistic that outside of the year where he went to the Super Bowl as an OC for the Atlanta Falcons, none of his teams have really been ranked top 10 in offense, top 5. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a great play caller. But something ain't vibing this year with me and Kyle Shanahan. And when people always compare Kyle to Sean McVay, I laugh. Sean McVay has done shit that Kyle would dream to do. McVay has only missed 1 year of the postseason while being as head coach of the Rams. Kyle has only made the playoffs 1 year. That was the Super Bowl year, so kudos to him. But every year after that and before that has been pretty fucking pedestrian. The 49ers played a buzzsaw. They played a team that they damn near always lose to in Seattle. I think it's something like 14 out of the last 16 times they have lost. Seattle looked like they were dead in the water. Now the 49ers look like they're dead in the water. Now the 49ers go to Arizona next week in a matchup against the very much so surprising Arizona Cardinals. I thought they were going to be dead last in the division. They are playing MVP, or Kyler Murray is playing MVP style football. Their defense is playing well. But, Buda Baker, J.J. Watt, A.J. Green is turning back the clock. James Conner's playing well. He had 2 touchdowns last week against the Rams. They beat the Rams to smithereens last week. That same Rams team that beat the Buccaneers. The 49ers going into the bye week might be 2-3, and Arizona might be 5-0, and that's probably curtains on the division for the 49ers. Now, I didn't predict the 49ers to win the division, so the wild card will still be possible, but not with the way they are playing at the moment. Moving on quickly, I want to touch base on the Raiders. The Raiders lost on Monday Night Football yesterday, 28-14. The Raiders once again got off to a slow start. It seems like this is the current trend for them. It happened against the Miami Dolphins. It now happened against the Chargers. They got out to a 21-0 lead. The Chargers did at halftime. The Dolphins the week before got off to a 14-0 lead. And against the Ravens, I believe the Raiders got out actually to a fast start, but then were down by 11 at some point in time. You just can't, unless you're kind of like a Kansas City Chiefs, where I think anybody, even though they're down 12, 14, 21 points, you still kind of believe they're going to come back. The Raiders are not at that point yet where they can be constantly playing from behind like that. Now, the Raiders can quickly put up some points. But I think when you're a team that's just learning to win like the Raiders are at the moment, playing from behind is definitely not a recipe for success. That's something that John Gruden needs to instill in them. That's something that needs to improve. Because for the most part, the Raiders have impressed me this year. Just, playing from behind is something that does need to be fixed. Their defense has been playing fantastic football. Like I said, Solomon Thomas looks like a new man. Their defensive backfield is playing great with some of the pieces that they had the year before. It just really goes to show you what a good defensive coordinator can do for you guys. Gus Bradley is outperforming expectations. Now, do I expect the Raiders to come back to earth a little bit? I kind of do, to be honest with you. It seems like their defensive backfield, some players went down with injuries yesterday. Let's see what happens with that. Their offensive line is a big concern. Denzel Good's out for the year. Their John Simpson is pretty fucking terrible. Their starting center, Andre James, I believe is his name, is pretty terrible as well. Their offensive line is constantly having Derek Carr be under pressure. And Joey Bosa came out this week and said anytime you put a little bit of pressure on Derek Carr, he kind of hides under pressure. He kind of goes down. So that was a little bit of a critique. So I don't know if that's the blueprint going forward, just to blitz the fuck out of the Raiders' offensive line, because that definitely looks to be their Achilles heel this year. Raiders go on to the Bears next week, who just, beat the they just beat the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions left something like 21 points on the board. They were in the red zone damn near a big portion of the game and just weren't able to capitalize. So I don't know if it was luck that got the Bears a victory there, but we shall see. The Bears go into Las Vegas next week. We still don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback for them. Matt Nagy, in his stupid ways, is saying that Andy Dalton might be the quarterback, but Justin Fields looked a lot better this past week, and I think you got to ride the wave and continue this momentum with him in the game. I got the Raiders winning next week against the Bears. I just don't see Justin Fields coming into Allegiant Stadium and taking out that defensive line. That's been a big check mark for the Raiders this year. They've been absolutely fantastic. Max Crosby, Ngakoue, and Solomon Thomas. They've been great. But the Raiders do need to stop their slow starts. I think if that continues, I think it's going to be a problem. Now, that division's pretty interesting. You got 3 teams at 3-1, and you got the Chiefs at 2-2. I think those Chiefs are going to obviously make a comeback very shortly. Real quickly, the Dolphins are just absolutely fucking pitiful. Their offense is absolutely disgusting. They struggled against the Raiders. They barely were able to put up any points until like later in the fourth quarter. Same thing happened again this week where, you know, I saw something where Brissett didn't have a meaningful drive until sometime in the fourth quarter. Now they get Tua back, not this week, but the next week, but it just might be a little too late. The blame for that goes definitely on whoever's running personnel there, whether it's, you know, Brian Flores who's drafting these guys, but they just haven't figured out the quarterback position there. Tua's not very good. Jacoby Brissett's not very good. Their defense, for the life of them, is keeping them in ball games. But when you have such a pitiful offense like the Dolphins do at the moment, there's not going to be many victories in there. Now, Tua comes back in a week. Let's see what happens there. He has a bigger arm than Brissett. He's a little bit, he can get the ball downfield a little bit more. But the Dolphins just seem like an absolute dumpster fire at the moment. And it's looking like, it keeps looking like that pick, the Tua pick, is looking worse and worse. I could see them doing something in the offseason, going out there and getting Deshaun Watson. There was rumors out there. In fact, the owner, Stephen Ross, seems to be a guy that wants to get rid of Tua. He's just kind of like, this guy ain't working for us. Let's go get a new guy in there. Interesting developments in Miami. They were kind of thought of as going to be a division contender there with the Patriots and the Bills. It's not looking like that at all. It's not looking very pretty there in Miami. And it's also looking like they haven't had a fucking quarterback since Dan Marino, and Dan Marino retired in like 98, 99. So they need to go back to the drawing board there for the quarterback position because they're wasting a pretty talented defense who constantly is keeping them in games. Moving on real quickly to discuss Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson and the New York Jets got their first victory, come from behind victory in overtime. You know, Zach Wilson finally showed some promise. This is what Robert Saleh and that organization there in the Jets wanted to see. He did make some mistakes, but all rookie quarterbacks are going to make mistakes. He looked damn good. He was directing traffic, had Corey Davis go downfield on a broken play, and he threw a long damn touchdown pass there to him. They got a rookie running back in Michael Thomas, I believe is his name. And he's looking very good, or looked good this past week. The Jets, by far, this was their best game because they look like a fucking semi-pro team the first 3 games of the season. And finally, they came out this week and got a W on the board. Zach Wilson looked very good. Now, there's going to be ebbs and flows with this season for him. This was the good. There might be some bad next week. There might be some bad the following week. But just as long as he's not, like I said last week, if the Jets come out of this year saying, okay, we got a guy in Zach Wilson, that means to me the season was a success. If yesterday was any indication of how Zach Wilson will play going forward, they got a guy. Now, if we see the Zach Wilson from weeks 1 through 3, then back to the drawing board. But impressive victory for Zach Wilson and the New York Jets. Similarly, the New York Football Giants also got a victory, and their struggling quarterback Daniel Jones had over 400 passing yards. They were down 11 in the fourth quarter. They came from behind and beat a pretty talented New Orleans Saints defense. They made a joke out of them. This is a New Orleans Saints defense that made Aaron Rodgers look like a joke, that made the New England Patriots and that offense look like a joke. So the fact that Daniel Jones was able to go into the New Orleans Superdome and get a victory there while coming from behind, that's pretty fucking good, because I criticized the fuck out of them the week before. I said, I'm not sure if they're going to get a victory in the first 9 weeks. Well, guess what? They got a victory right after I fucking said that. Now, do I think that Joe Judge, their head coach, is still the guy that is going to take them to the promised land and is the guy? No, I still think the New York Football Giants are terrible, but they showed like they're not a team that's willing to just die like they did yesterday, like they done the previous 3 weeks. They look good this past week. Daniel Jones looked good. Surprisingly enough, Daniel Jones has been a pretty damn good fantasy football starting quarterback if you have him in any of your leagues. Not many do, but just a little tidbit there. But Daniel Jones, for a guy that gets so much criticism, which is very much so well-deserved, he really looked good this game against New Orleans. Let's see if we could build on that momentum. I don't expect I expect this to be kind of an aberration, because they just, did not look like a team ready to compete. Now, I don't know what that says about the Saints. We keep seeing two sides of the Saints in these games, in their W's against the Patriots and the Green Bay Packers. Their defense came out to play, and Jameis Winston looked great. In their losses, their defense has looked terrible, and Jameis has looked terrible. And like I said last week, this is the recipe of an 8-9 win team, about average. And that's what I kind of expect. I think Jameis Winston is not a quarterback you can count on to win you football games going forward, or at least consistently. This is the Jameis you're going to see. Mac Jones looked good, and he's looking like a quarterback that's going to look good in the long run. He really impressed against the Bucs. Granted, the Bucs are without damn near everybody in the defensive backfield, so much so that they had to sign Richard Sherman and even play him on like 3 days' notice. He looked good. In fact, he looked better in that game than Tom Brady did, than the damn GOAT. So that was impressive. I mean, everybody had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning by a landslide. I said, not so fast, my friend. I said, Bill Belichick also has an ego. He's going to get that defense and that team ready to play, and he kind of did. They were one missed field goal away from winning that game. They lost 19-17. They had Nick Folk come in there, and he hit a field goal off the crossbar with 56 seconds remaining, which ended the game. But the New England Patriots played them tough, and Mac Jones looked good in the process. Mac Jones looks like he's going to be a guy, and it looks like the Patriots got a guy without having to trade up. And I'm sure Mac Jones has a chip on his shoulder as well. Seems like a guy that kind of does always run with the chip on his shoulder. And, the Patriots are 1-3, but their quarterback's looking good, and that's definitely a positive. They'll have some guys coming back on defense soon. Their defense has been played really well, but Stephon Gilmore is going to come back, and that's going to definitely improve that defense. That offensive side of the ball still needs to kind of improve. They got some pieces there, but it just seems like the play calling there by Josh McDaniels has been pretty questionable all year. Moving on real quick, I want to talk about the Denver Broncos, who got smacked, and their quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, has a concussion. Go figure. They play 3 teams who have 0 wins. Then they play a team that's, with Lamar Jackson, and a Baltimore Ravens team that is pretty talented, and they get absolutely smacked. The only reason they were kind of in that game is because the Denver Broncos defense is fucking fantastic. And they were kind of able to keep that Baltimore Ravens offense at bay for a bit. But when you lose your quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater, a quarterback who's not even really talented to begin with at this point in time in his career, but a guy who can kind of keep you in the game, rely on his defense, take what the defense is giving you, not make many turnovers, and just make the plays that he needs to make. Once he left the game and put in Drew Lock, everything went to shit. I don't know what the status of Teddy Bridgewater is next week, but a concussion usually means, you're going to be out for a week for the most part. That means Drew Lock will be in there. We'll see how Drew Lock does. I was wrong about Vic Fangio and how he should have handled the quarterback situation. I thought for sure they should have went with Drew Lock, but after seeing him play again this past week, the guy's just not very good. So, their best bet is to stick with Teddy Bridgewater going forward. But guess what? I kind of curse, whatever I say kind of goes the opposite. So Drew Lock might light it up next week. We shall see. But the Denver Broncos are 3-1, three-way tie for the division. I still think if you look at those three teams in that division, the Chargers are by far the most impressive 3-1 team. They should be 4-0. I would say the Raiders are the second most impressive 3-1 team because they have actually beat real opponents. And then the Broncos would be there in third as, they still need to get their first real W in my opinion. But at the end of the day, you gotta win who's in front of you, and they've done that. But let's see how they react once they play better opposition. Wasn't a good sign this week when they played the Baltimore Ravens. Lastly, on my takes for the NFL, I wanted to really quickly touch on the Chicago Bears. They went out there. I had the Detroit Lions as the upset special because I was very impressed with the Detroit Lions so far 3 weeks into the season. I was not impressed with the play calling the week before under Matt Nagy with Justin Fields. He's damn near was getting Justin Fields killed left and right because he wasn't changing up the play calls for him. He was acting as if Andy Dalton was still the fucking quarterback. Speaking of Andy Dalton, despite the fact that Justin Fields and his team went in there and won against the Detroit Lions, he's still saying that Dalton might remain the starter. And that, to me, is the essence of why this man probably will get fired at the end of the year. Justin Fields did not play a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but you need a fucking mobile quarterback in that team. Their offensive line is pitiful. Their offensive line is not an NFL caliber offensive line. You need a mobile quarterback in there because he'll be able to extend plays. He'll be able to do things that Andy Dalton could never imagine doing in his wildest freaking dreams. But now they're going to go back to Andy Dalton. I think that's a bad move. I think they need to stick with Justin Fields. He needs to play. He needs to learn. And the Bears, at this point in time, if they go back to Andy Dalton, it's just going to be the same old Bears. Andy Dalton's going to get killed back there is what I'm trying to say here. But it looks like they had a victory against Detroit. I think the score was a little off. I mean, Detroit team plays really hard, but they just keep making these types of mistakes that a team like that, if you make those types of mistakes, you are going to lose. And they were like in the red zone 3, 4, 5 times against Chicago and didn't score once. And that could have been possibly the difference in the freaking game. But the Bears got a victory, and that's all that matters. We'll see the quarterback situation that's coming up. But if they go back to Andy Dalton, just fire Matt Nagy immediately. There's no fucking use in having that guy be your head coach because if you're going to make decisions like that, you might as well just get your ass out of town because those Bears fans are going to be absolutely fucking ruthless. Now they play the Raiders next week. That'll be an interesting test for them. I think a guy like Justin Fields would fare much better than a guy like Andy Dalton against that defensive line. He's going to be able to move out of the pocket. And the Raiders at times do struggle against running quarterbacks. So it would be very interesting to see Justin Fields play against the Raiders at Allegiant Stadium next week. But those are my NFL takes. I'm gonna go to my next segment, which is the Angry Degenerate's Dumbass of the Week.
The first step to recovery is admitting you're a dumbass. The Angry Degenerate's Dumbass of the Week.
My dumbass of the week is this fucking idiot named Andrew Wiggins of the Golden State Warriors. Unless you've been living under a fucking rock, California is under some sort of a vaccine mandate type thing, and Andrew Wiggins said, hey, I ain't gonna get the vaccine because I don't trust what's going into my freaking body. You know what? Good for him. He should trust he should care what's going into his body. But guess what? The NBA and the state of California make the rules. The NBA or the state of California says if you're going to be in an arena, in an indoor arena, you have to be vaccinated. So that means if you play in a California team, like let's say the Lakers or the Warriors, or a hockey team like the San Jose Sharks, you must be vaccinated. Those are the rules. Those are the rules you got to play by. Now, you're not being forced because you can actually sit out the games, but guess what? You ain't going to be fucking paid. What a fucking concept, right? If you don't work, you don't get paid. Welcome to the 9-to-5 lifestyle that 99.9% of Americans live, Andrew Wiggins, and you privileged NBA fucks or athletes in general. Now, when Andrew Wiggins got wind that the NBA said, hey, if you don't play, you ain't gonna get paid if you don't have your vaccine, this motherfucker's ideologies went completely out the window and he got vaccinated. Way to have a backbone, Andrew Wiggins. Way to fucking live up to the ideology that you put out there. That you didn't. You know what gets me about all this fucking shit? Is that all these same fucking people that say, you know what? I'm not going to get the vaccine because I don't know what's in it. What other stupid fucking bullshit do you put in your body that you have no idea is going in there? I mean, come on. At this point in time, this fucking vaccine has been out here for damn near over a year. Have you heard mass casualties of this vaccine causing mass casualties? In fact, Andrew Wiggins said that he already had the COVID. And guess what? There's reports out there that say having the COVID does detrimental effects to your body, especially in the future. You'll find it out in the future. But yet, he doesn't talk about that, but yet he talks about how, me getting this vaccine, I hope I'm going to be good in 10 years. Wiggins, vaccines have been alive and well, doing well, as long as I've been in school. To go to an elementary school, to go to a high school, you need to be vaccinated. That's just the rules of life, my friend. You got to play by the rules. But I just fucking laughed because once this motherfucker found out he wasn't going to get paid, he gave it up. He was like, well, fuck my ideology. I'm going to get vaccinated because I want to get paid. Just like the $1 Million Man said, everyone has a fucking price. And guess what? So did Andrew Wiggins. Once that motherfucker found out he wasn't going to get paid, he said, oh, well, I guess I'll just get vaccinated. And he came out and said, well, I'm not happy about getting vaccinated. Well, guess what? Nobody's fucking happy about getting vaccinated. If you're happy to get vaccinated, you must be fucking crazy. You think I want to get sticked with the fucking needle in my arm? No, that shit is painful. But you're doing it for the betterment of fucking society, you selfish piece of fucking shit. And that's the thing that always gets me about these anti-vaxxers. They're so they don't give a fuck about anybody else. And of course, this man, Andrew Wiggins, who's been a privileged little bitch baby playing in the NBA. By the way, he's not very good either. Complete fucking bust compared to what his expectations were from Minnesota and now to Golden State. But that's besides the point. America is run by corporate elites. And you must play by their rules. Andrew Wiggins just found that out. Everyone has a price. And you just got. And that's why you motherfucker, Andrew Wiggins, are my dumbass of the week. I didn't have time to put Kyrie Irving in this category because he's another fucking idiot. But I'm sure he'll say more stupid shit as the season goes on. And I'm sure I'll have him in my category of dumbass of the week coming up shortly. Now on to my last segment, which is the Angry Degenerates Gambling Picks of the Week.
And now, the Angry Degenerates Picks of the Week.
right, folks, my gambling picks of the week. I was 7-5 this past week, bringing my overall record to 53-38 since I started this goddamn podcast, making me still at 58%. The goal is 60%. Real quickly, going through last week's games, I had Burnley beating Norwich. That ended in a 0-0 draw, so that was an L. I had Arsenal draw no bet against Brighton. They drew, so that means no bet on that. Sevilla -20 against Granada. They ended up losing 1-0. I had Barca do not bet against Atletico. They lost 2-0, so that was a loss. At this point in time, I was like, fuck, man. 3 out of the 4 things didn't hit for me. Then I went on a little bit of a winning streak here. Juventus -110 against Torino. They had a goal in stoppage time, which saved my ass. Napoli won 2-1, -15 against Fiorentina. Michigan moneyline, they beat the tar out of the Wisconsin Badgers. I had New Mexico State +28 against SJSU. I think the game, SJSU won by about 10 points. I had Detroit +3 away to the Bears. As I spoke about that earlier, that was a loss. I had Miami -1.5 at home against Indianapolis. That was a loss. Chiefs -7 against Philadelphia was easy money. Baltimore +1.5 against Denver was easy money. And Packers -6.5 against Pittsburgh was easy money, bringing my record to 7-5. Now this week, I just didn't have enough time to do much research, so I only have 4 picks for you. They are all in the football world. I have Green Bay -3 away to the Bengals. I just think Green Bay going to the Bengals. Green Bay's much more talented than the Bengals. The Bengals are 3-1, which is why I think the line is down at -3. But I just think I got the Packers by at least a touchdown there. I have Titans -3 against the Jags. The Jags are in turmoil. I know the Titans just lost this past week, but they tend to play well coming off of a loss. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, especially now after coming up, what happened with Urban Meyer this past week, him cheating on his wife and grinding on some girls at a bar and just getting caught up doing it. It being pushed all over social media. The owner had to comment on it and saying he's, sad about what happened and this and that. I mean, Urban Meyer's starting to become a distraction there in Jacksonville, and I think the Titans beat him -3 against the Jags. I have Michigan -3 away to Nebraska. Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, they've been pretty impressive this year. They are traveling away to Nebraska, but Michigan is ranked. Nebraska is not. There's my logic. -3. I have Notre Dame -1 away to Virginia Tech. Notre Dame had a big game this past week, and they passed with flying colors. And now they're going away to a non-ranked team, -1. I got Notre Dame winning that game. So real quickly to recap, Green Bay -3 away to the Bengals. Titans -3 against the Jags. Michigan -3 away to Nebraska. Notre Dame -1 away to Virginia Tech. Those are my 4 picks of the week. Thank you once again for listening. This is episode 18 of the Angry Degenerate podcast. Like I have mentioned, I will be a guest on Now on the Clock podcast, which you can find anywhere where you can find my podcast, which is Google, Spotify, Apple, what have you. So I'll be a guest on there. It could be perhaps turn into a full-time thing where I become a co-host there. We shall see. So that means I'll be doing double duty, my podcast and that podcast, but it'll bring a different dynamic, and I will also share that with you guys whenever it's available or whenever it becomes official. Lastly, I got my TikTok account back. I was suspended for like 7 days for live streaming the UFC 266 pay-per-view. I also get a lot of people just snitching me out because a lot of Raider fans and Cowboy fans and Dodger fans, a bunch of snitches and bitches. But hey, that's the life I play. That's the game I play with some of the shit I say. So, the more the merrier, my friends. The more the merrier. And lastly, like I mentioned, I will be taking off this week, so I will probably not be podcasting next week and probably not be podcasting for the week after. So by the time I come back, we will find out how the Major League Baseball playoffs are doing, and we'll get a better picture of the NFL playoff picture going into week, I guess, 7 when I do my next podcast. Well, that's the episode for today. Thank you a lot, folks. Follow me on all social medias. Follow my YouTube channel. Follow my TikTok. Follow my Facebook. Follow whatever the fuck you need to follow. My content's all there. And I'll see you all in a few weeks.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you had a good time, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review as well. And follow @the Angry Degenerate on Instagram and TikTok for all the latest updates, hot takes, shit talking, and of course, some high quality grade A trolling. Until next time.